Some houses are just buildings. Others remember everything. The house on Maplewood Drive was the second kind. I hadn't lived there since I was 17. Yet the moment my suitcase rolled across the wooden floor, I felt it the echo of a life that had been interrupted, rearranged, and never properly explained. My name is Ethan Walker, and at 26, I was moving back into my childhood home for reasons I never imagined would bring me face to face with the one person. I had spent years trying not to think about my stepbrother. "Your room is still the same," my mother said gently, standing behind me in the hallway. I didn't change anything. I forced a smile. "Thanks, Mom." The truth was, I wished she had changed it. The room smelled faintly of dust and pine cleaner. The posters were gone, but the indent in the carpet where my bed used to be was still there, like a ghost refusing to fade. Outside the window, the oak tree swayed in the evening breeze, its branches brushing against the glass just like they used to. Somewhere down the hall, a door opened. My chest tightened. I knew that sound. Slow, deliberate footsteps followed footsteps. I hadn't heard in years, but recognized instantly. Then his voice, "You're here." I turned. Ryan Carter stood at the end of the hallway. My stepbrother, he was taller than I remembered, broader. His shoulders filled the doorway, and his dark hair was slightly longer, curling at the ends like he hadn't bothered to tame it. His face had changed to sharper jaw, deeper eyes, but the calm intensity in his expression was the same look that had once made my heart race for reasons I didn't understand back then. "Hey," I said. It came out quieter than I meant. Ryan nodded once, his gaze lingering on me longer than necessary. There was something unreadable in his eyes. Surprise, maybe? Or something else entirely. Mom cleared her throat. "I'll let you boys catch up. Dinner's in an hour." She disappeared down the stairs, leaving the hallway heavy with unspoken history. Ryan shifted his weight. "Didn't think you'd actually come back?" "Didn't think I'd need to," I replied honestly. Our eyes locked. The silence between us stretched not awkward, but loaded. This wasn't just a reunion. Ryan and I weren't related by blood. That mattered. It had mattered more than it should have. Our parents married when I was 15 and Ryan was 17. Two broken families stitched together by convenience and hope. At first, we were polite strangers sharing a roof. Then something changed. We became friends. Late-night conversations, shared music, long drives without destinations. Ryan had been my protector, my anchor. He taught me how to drive, how to throw a punch, how to stand my ground. What he didn't know, what I didn't fully understand myself, was that every smile he gave me lingered in my chest long after he walked away. Had buried that feeling, or so I thought. Dinner felt like a performance. Mom talked too much. Ryan talked a little. I stared at my plate more than I ate. "So, Ethan," Mom said brightly, "are you planning to stay long?" "Just until I get back on my feet," I replied. "A few months, maybe." Ryan's fork paused midair. "A few months," he repeated quietly. "Is that a problem?" I asked before I could stop myself. His eyes flicked up to mine. "No, just unexpected." That word again, unexpected. I felt it in the air, thick and heavy. After dinner, I escaped to the backyard, needing space. The night was cool. Stars scattered across the sky like fragments of something broken but beautiful. Footsteps crunched behind me. "You always used to come out here when you were overwhelmed," Ryan said. I didn't turn around. "Some habits don't change." He leaned against the fence beside me, close enough that I could feel his presence. Solid, grounding, dangerous. "How long have you known?" he asked suddenly. "Known what?" He exhaled slowly. "That you'd come back like this? That we'd be standing here again?" I swallowed. "I didn't plan it." "Neither did I," he said. Our shoulders brushed. The contact sent a shock through me small. "Accidental but electric." Ryan pulled back instantly. "Sorry." "It's fine," I said too quickly. But it wasn't that night. I lay awake listening to the house settle. I wondered which room Ryan was in. I wondered if he remembered the night years ago when we almost crossed a line neither of us knew how to name. I had left without explanation shortly after that college, a job, a new city. Distance had been my solution. Now, distance was gone, and the feelings I thought I'd outgrown were very much alive. The next morning, I found Ryan in the garage fixing something that didn't look broken. "You don't need to do that," I said. He shrugged. "Gives me something to focus on." Ryan, I began, then stopped. He looked up, eyes searching mine. "Yeah," I hesitated, because some truths change everything once spoken. And I didn't yet know that he was carrying one of his own, a truth that had waited years for my return. Truth that would rewrite everything I thought I knew about us. Some feelings don't disappear. They wait. They settle into the quiet corners of your life, patient and sharp, until the moment you're foolish enough to return to the place where they were born. Living under the same roof with Ryan again felt like walking through a memory that kept rewriting itself. Mornings were cautious. We crossed paths in the kitchen, exchanging polite nods, careful smiles. He drank his coffee black now. I noticed things like that, how his hands were rougher, how his voice had dropped just enough to feel heavier in my chest at night. The house grew too quiet. That was when the tension surfaced. One evening, the power went out during a storm. The house plunged into darkness, rain pounding against the windows like it was trying to get inside. Mom had gone to stay with a friend that night. It was just Ryan and me. Breakers in the basement. He said, "I'll come with you." I replied without thinking. The basement smelled like damp concrete and old boxes. Ryan flicked on his phone flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness. For a moment, we stood too close. "You always hated the basement," he said. "I still do." He smiled faintly. "Guess some habits really don't change." The power came back on with a loud click, but neither of us moved right away. "Ethan," Ryan said quietly. I looked at him. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. "Never mind." The word never echoed louder than the storm upstairs. A few days later, I found myself in Ryan's old room. I hadn't meant to go in, but the door was open. And curiosity is a dangerous thing. The room was cleaner than it used to be. More adult, but some things hadn't changed. His guitar leaning against the wall. A stack of notebooks on his desk. One notebook lay open. I shouldn't have read it. I did anyway. Not words, drawings. Sketches of places we'd been together. A lake. A car parked under stars. And then dash me. Not detailed. Not perfect. But unmistakably me. My chest tightened. I closed the notebook just as Ryan appeared in the doorway. His eyes went straight to the desk. "You weren't supposed to see that." "I'm sorry," I said quickly. "I didn't mean to, it's fine," he interrupted, but his voice was strained. "You didn't read anything, I saw enough." He stood there, years of restraint pressing down on us. "Why did you leave?" Ryan asked suddenly. The question hit harder than I expected. "I thought it was better," I said honestly. "For everyone." "For you," he corrected. I didn't deny it. That night we sat on the back porch. The same place we used to talk until sunrise? You ever think about how different things could have been? Ryan asked. "All the time," I admitted. He laughed softly. "Figures." There was a pause. Then quietly, "Did you ever feel like we were something more?" My heart pounded. This was it. The moment I had imagined and feared in equal measure. I didn't know what I felt, I said carefully. I just knew it scared me. Ryan nodded slowly. It scared me too. Our eyes met and something shifted, not yet breaking, but cracking. A week later, Ryan brought someone home, a guy. His name was Mark. Mark was friendly, confident, the kind of person who fit easily into spaces. He laughed too loudly, touched Ryan's arm too casually. I told myself I didn't care. My chest told a different story. At dinner, I barely spoke. I watched Ryan from across the table, how relaxed he seemed, how natural it looked. "You okay?" Ryan asked later when Mark had left. "Yeah," I lied. "Why? You've been quiet." I shrugged. just tired. He studied me like he didn't believe a word. A few nights later, I heard voices in the kitchen. Ryan and Mark Lowe. Tense. "I can't do this," Ryan said. "Do what?" Mark replied, "Pretend I'm not waiting for something else." Silence, then footsteps. The door slammed. I stood frozen in the hallway. Ryan turned and saw me. His face fell. "You heard that?" I didn't mean to. He ran a hand through his hair. "It's over. I'm sorry," I said. "For what?" he asked bitterly. "For being honest? For not being able to move on?" My breath caught. "Move on from who?" I asked softly. He looked at me like the answer was obvious, like it had always been. Later that night, Ryan knocked on my door. "I need to tell you something," he said. My pulse thundered in my ears. He stepped inside. Closing the door behind him, "I tried to build a life that didn't include you," he said. "Tried to convince myself what I felt back then was just confusion, and—" I asked, and it never went away. The air felt charged, fragile. "I don't know what that means now," he continued, "but I couldn't keep pretending." I swallowed hard. "Ryan, we're family. By marriage," he said. And even that, he stopped himself, breathing hard. "I don't want to hurt anyone," he finished. Neither did I, but the truth was already hurting us. We stood there, inches apart, hearts exposed but guarded. Nothing happened, and somehow, that was harder than if it had, because desire denied doesn't fade, it sharpens. As Ryan turned to leave, he paused. "There's more," he said. "Something I should have told you years ago." I looked at him. "What?" He shook his head. "Not yet." And then he was gone, leaving. Behind a promise, a threat, a truth, waiting to surface. Some truths don't explode when they're revealed. They unfold slowly, painfully, honestly. And once they do, nothing ever fits back into its old shape. Ryan didn't tell me his truth that night, or the next day, or the day after that. Instead, we existed in a fragile ceasefire, polite, careful, painfully aware of every breath the other took. We spoke about groceries, weather, chores, never about us, but the truth has a way of leaking through silence. I felt it in the way Ryan lingered when he passed my room, in the way his voice softened when he said my name, in the tension that followed us through the house like a shadow. One evening, Mom announced she'd be gone for the weekend, visiting relatives out of town. The moment the front door closed behind her, the house seemed to exhale. So did we. Ryan found me in the living room, sitting on the floor with old photo albums spread around me. "You're brave," he said quietly. "I avoid those things like they might bite." I held up a picture of us as teenagers sitting on the hood of his car, laughing at something long forgotten. "We looked happy," I said. "We were," he replied. I looked up at him. "Ryan, you said there was something you needed to tell me?" He didn't sit down right away. He paced. Once. Twice. Then he stopped. "I knew," he said. "Knew what?" "That I wasn't straight," he said simply. "Before you left, before I even admitted it to myself." My breath caught. "And you," he continued, voice tight, "were the reason I finally stopped lying." The room went very still. "I didn't understand it back then," he said. "I just knew that every time you smiled at me, something inside me shifted. That I noticed things I wasn't supposed to notice. That when you left, it felt like losing more than a brother. My heart felt like it might break open. Why didn't you say anything?" I whispered, "Because I thought I was protecting you," he said. "And myself. And our parents. I thought distance would fix it." He laughed bitterly. "It didn't." I swallowed hard. "It didn't for me either." He looked at me, then really looked at me. "You felt it too." It wasn't a question. "Yes," I said. I was terrified. I thought I was broken. I thought leaving would make it stop. Ryan knelt in front of me. "You were never broken," he said softly. "You were just in love and didn't know what to do with it." The word love hung between us, heavy and undeniable. I reached out before I could stop myself, my fingers brushing his wrist. He inhaled sharply but didn't pull away. "We can't pretend this away anymore." I said, "I know," he replied. "But we have to be careful," I added. "About how we do this? About who we hurt?" Ryan nodded. "I don't want secrecy or shame. I just want honesty." "So do I." Slowly, deliberately, he leaned his forehead against mine. The closeness was intimate but restrained. A promise, not a violation. When our lips finally met, it wasn't rushed or hungry, it was gentle, like something fragile being handled with care. We pulled back almost immediately. "Breathing hard, that," Ryan said quietly, "changes everything." Yes, I agreed. But maybe for the first time, it feels right. The next few weeks were about restraint and courage. We didn't rush. We talked a lot about boundaries, about timing, about how to tell our parents or if we should, about the difference between impulse and commitment. Ryan moved out temporarily, giving us space to breathe and think clearly. It hurt, but it was necessary. During that time, I realized something important. Love wasn't just desire or longing. It was patience, responsibility, choosing what was hard over what was easy. When Ryan came back one evening, calmer, steadier, I knew we were ready. "I don't want to hide anymore," he said. "Not from myself. Not from you. And then let's do this the right way." I replied, telling our parents wasn't dramatic. It was. Quiet, emotional, messy, in a very human way. There were questions, tears, long pauses filled with fear and confusion. But there was also love. "I don't fully understand," my mother said eventually, "but I see how you look at each other, and I know what that means." Ryan's father nodded slowly. "If you're choosing this with open eyes," he said, "then you deserve honesty and respect." It wasn't perfect acceptance, but it was a beginning. Months passed. Ryan and I learned what it meant to be together, not as a secret, not as a fantasy, but as two men choosing each other in the real world. There were challenges. There always are, but there was also laughter, safety, a deep, steady love that didn't burn. Out it settled in. One night, standing under the same oak tree outside the house, Ryan squeezed my hand. "Coming back here," he said, "was the best thing that ever happened to me." I smiled. It scared me more than anything. "And now?" "Now," I said, "I can't imagine leaving." Again, the house on Maplewood Drive still remembers everything. But it no longer defines us. We rewrote its story. Not by erasing the past, but by finally telling the truth. And sometimes, that's what love really is. Not the absence of fear, but the courage to stay anyway. Love doesn't end at confession. That's where it actually begins. Ryan and I didn't suddenly become fearless after choosing each other. If anything, the fear changed shape. Now, it wasn't about what we felt. It was about how the world would respond to it. We learned the small, important things first. How to argue without hurting. How to listen instead of defending. How to give each other space without drifting apart. We didn't live together right away. Ryan rented a small apartment across town, and I stayed at the house until I found work again. It gave us room to grow separately while still choosing each other every day. Some nights were easy, others were heavy, but every night ended the same way, with a quiet certainty that this wasn't temporary. The first time we went out as a couple, we didn't hold hands. Not because we were ashamed, because we were still learning what courage felt like in public. It was a small cafe, warm lights, quiet music, strangers who didn't know our history. Ryan reached for his coffee. His fingers brushing mine, he froze. I didn't pull away. Slowly, deliberately, I let my hand rest against his. He looked at me. Searching my face. "You okay?" he asked softly. I nodded. "Yeah, I am." That moment mattered more than grand gestures ever could, because love isn't proven by being loud. Sometimes it's proven by staying. Not everyone reacted kindly. There were awkward questions, uncomfortable silences, A few people who quietly disappeared from our lives. One night, Ryan came over looking exhausted. My uncle called, he said. Said some things he shouldn't have. I didn't ask what he said. I just pulled Ryan into my arms. I'm not leaving, I told him. He held me tighter. I know. That's what scares me sometimes. Why? Because now I actually have something to lose. I understood that fear. Love makes you brave, but it also makes you vulnerable. A year later, the house on Maplewood Drive went up for sale, standing in the empty living room. Ryan squeezed my hand. This place built us, he said. And broke us. And brought us back, I added. We walked through every room one last time. The hallway. The backyard. The porch where almost confessions once died in silence. At my old bedroom door, Ryan paused. I used to stand outside this room at night, he admitted. Wondering if you ever thought about me, I swallowed. I did. Every night. He smiled sadly. We were so young. But we made it, I said. Yes, he agreed. We did. We moved into a place of our own shortly after. Nothing fancy. Sunlight through the windows. A kitchen that smelled like coffee and comfort. One evening, Ryan stood behind me while I cooked, his arms wrapping around my waist. You ever think about how close we came to never doing this? He murmured. All the time, I said. And I'm grateful we didn't let fear decide for us. He kissed my shoulder, soft, familiar, safe. We didn't become perfect. We became real. A couple who laughed loudly at nothing. Who argued about music playlists. Who held each other through bad days and celebrated the quiet, good ones. We learned that love doesn't need permission to exist. It just needs honesty years from now. People may forget the details. They won't remember the house, or the fear, or the silence we lived inside for so long. But I'll always remember this, the moment my stepbrother shared an unexpected truth. It became the love of my life. Not because it was easy, but because it was real. Love doesn't stop being tested once you choose it. It simply changes the questions it asks. 5 years. Passed more quietly than I expected, not in a boring way, but in a way that felt earned. Ryan and I grew into routines that once felt impossible. Morning coffee together, shared grocery lists, arguments about whether the windows should stay open at night. The small, ordinary details that only exist when something has lasted long enough to feel safe. We both changed. Ryan became softer in ways never allowed himself to be before. I became braver, less likely to run when things felt complicated. Love didn't erase our past. It gave it meaning. Over time, the world adjusted. Not everyone accepted us immediately, but fewer people questioned us. Friends introduced us as a couple without hesitation. Family gatherings stopped feeling like emotional minefields. One afternoon at a cousin's wedding, Ryan reached for my hand in front of everyone. It wasn't dramatic, but it was public. I squeezed back. Later that night, he said, I didn't even think about it. I just knew I wanted to. I smiled. That's how I know this is real. The future didn't arrive with fireworks. It arrived one rainy evening. Sitting on the couch with takeout boxes and a movie playing neither of us was watching. Do you ever think about what comes next? Ryan asked. Sometimes, I said. Do you? He nodded slowly. I used to think surviving was enough. Now I want more than that. Like what? A life that's intentional, he said. One we choose every day. I understood what he was asking, and I didn't feel afraid. Ryan didn't get down on one knee. There was no audience, no rehearsed speech. He simply took my hand one night, while we stood on the balcony, city lights stretching endlessly below us. I don't need things to be perfect, he said. I just need them to be honest. With you. I rested my forehead against his. I'm already there, I replied. We didn't label it right away, but the commitment was real. Sometimes we talked, not about the past, not with regret, but with gentleness, about the boys we used to be, about fear disguised as silence, about how close we came to missing each other entirely. If I could tell my younger self anything, I said once, it would be not to confuse fear with truth. Ryan smiled. I'd tell mine that love doesn't ask you to disappear. Home stopped being a place. It became a presence. It was Ryan's laughter from the next room, his hand finding mine in the dark. The calm certainty that I didn't have to explain myself anymore. We didn't need to rewrite the world. We just needed to live honestly inside it. The truth Ryan shared all those years ago didn't just change our relationship, it changed the direction of our lives. Because when someone trusts you with who they really are, they give you something fragile and powerful. And loving them back is an act of courage that never really ends.